And greetings, Earth Explorers. Welcome to X Squared Radio. I'm your host, Brooks Agnew, coming to you live from an undisclosed location east of the Appalachian Mountains. We already know that. We already heard that. There, echo turned off. We're having a good time tonight, I'll tell you. We're at the new studio. Hold on one second while I adjust my camera. It has decided to look up out of the way. I think this has got it. Hold on one second. We're getting close. We're getting close. Yeah, that's it. All right. Okay, now we're cooking with gas. Wow. So we are at the new studio having internet problems. It's all right. Everything's under control now. It's under control. No problems whatsoever. All right, let me see. We'll move this over here so I can see what I'm doing. Yeah, very good. Much better. Much better. Okay, so I'm right off the laptop tonight, so it's going to be a little bit choppy. Just have patience with me. Have patience, Earth Explorers. Let's see. This is where the past meets the future. You know that. The results are always positive. We might go a little past your imagination. Don't worry about it. You'll be traveling safely with us. And remember, this is the voice of the revolution. So the chat room is already filling up. Wow, I have to scroll way up here. Della Meow was the first one in tonight. Truth Refugee, Tatanka Dave. What is it? Oh, Alm 3 Texas is there. Good, good, good. All right. It's going to be a good crowd. Let me check really quick what's on Foxhole. We don't have anybody in Foxhole. So I tell you, up north, it's very cold. It's very cold outside right now. Outside our studios, my AccuWindow forecast says very chilly indeed. Those of you who were wondering about my cardio version that happened on Thursday, everything went well. Heartbeat is back to normal. Everything is good. Cardio version is where they hook up a set of battery cables to you and shock your heart back into reality. Because the heart, every once in a while gets confused. It doesn't know whether it's supposed to beat up or beat down or beat both the directions. And so sometimes it just takes a little control alt delete. And that's what we did on Thursday. And everything worked out perfect. So thank you for the prayers and the concerns. Believe me, the prayers were felt, even though I was unconscious when it happened. It's okay. Everything was under control. So, my first story tonight, I have to talk about this Somali situation in Minnesota. Uh, if anything was shaping up as a trigger for uh, a civil war, this is it. I'm not talking about, um, civil unrest in the streets. I'm not talking about multiple states, you know, changing the gauge of their railroad and taking up arms against the Union. That's not what I'm talking about. Civil War started when South Carolina decided to secede from the Union. What they said was these federal laws don't have any effect in our state. We don't recognize them. And so we're going to change our money. We're going to change the gauge of our railroad. And you Union troops can get the hell out of our state. And that was the start of it. And then, 12 states followed her, and well, the rest is bloody history. Uh, Honestly, I don't think anybody's going to follow Minneapolis. Although we're having the Somali problem in Ohio, we're having the Somali problem in Maine, and it's probably happening everywhere there's a little group of Somalis in this country because they have a mission. Their mission is to steal as much as they can steal from this country, send it back to Somalia so that when, not if, when they are deported, they have a place to go and money in the bank. And that's kind of what it's all about. And please let me know in the chat room if this is running smoothly tonight. I think we have enough bandwidth, but I have a wireless router right next to my computer. Like I could reach over here and touch it, and it just went down. It just failed. So I have another router on the way. This one's kind of old and clanky. There's some duct tape on it and other things, but it was working up until a few minutes ago, and then it decided to cough its guts up all over the floor here. And that's what we're at. So I'm running on the modem that is about 120 feet that way. So that it may be a little choppy. We'll do the best that we can. You just let me know. Oh, audio is great, but the video is a bit grainy. Yeah, well, about that. I did buy a new camera, high resolution, wide angle, so I could pick all this up, and it's not as high resolution as I thought. It's a 1080, and I should have got a 4K. The difference was about 200 bucks in price, so I thought, oh, 1080 is good enough. Who's going to know? But you can already tell, can't you? Yes. So Tom Homan is the Secretary of um, Border Patrol, and he appeared in the news, and he was asked by a reporter about Trump's claims that Omar allegedly married her brother. And this is what he said. Uh, I just got advised by my fraud investigator the other day that I asked the question, who received the file? Who received the file? And he says, no, there was immigration fraud involved. This statute of limitations became an issue in the last 4 years when this was first brought up. Who was president? Who runs the DOJ? So pulling the records now, pulling the files, and we're looking at it. That's what he confirmed. But this fraud investigator, who I know personally, one of the best fraud investigators in Homeland Security investigation, said there is no doubt whatsoever. Homan said of the potential of Omar immigration fraud, he reviewed the file, so I'm running that down this week. Matter of fact, and we'll see. Further, Homan was asked about the reports that nearly 50% of the visas in Somali community are fraudulent. 50% of the like 75,000 Somalis that are there. We're going to look at those here illegally. Of course, we're going to look at those here under visa or some sort of, immigration process that are criminals. We're going to look at national security threats, but those who came through a process that weren't properly vetted, provide documentation, who slipped through the Biden's administration's weak processes, giving visas. We're going to go through the whole gamut. We're going to deep dive all of this, and we'll hold these people accountable. I don't know exactly what that means, if the officials are going to be held accountable or if the illegals are going to be held accountable. He said there's going to be multiple deportations coming. Let's see here. The P3 refugee pipeline, created by the Refugee Act of 1980, allows refugees to apply for their spouses, unmarried children, and parents to also receive refugee status in the U.S. from 2003 through 2008. Africans, Somalis, represented more than 95% of the refugees who arrived in the U.S. through the P3 program. So in March of 2008, This is before Obama becomes president. In March of 2008, after some 36,000, mostly Africans, had entered the U.S. and P3 refugees, the majority of whom resettled in Minnesota, the program was halted by then President George W. Bush after the State Department unveiled mass fraud. They stopped it. It was probably manageable at that point. And the State Department published a report in November of 2008. This is slightly after the election, detailing how the agency had started requiring PT refugees from Somalia, Ethiopia, Liberia to take DNA tests, to prove that they were blood relatives to the US bound refugees, sponsoring them for such status. Oh, yes, my brother, my cousin, my uncle, my aunt, my grandparents. But if they're unrelated, then the whole thing's fraudulent. So they were doing DNA tests to find out, are they really related? It turns out it wasn't all that helpful because they were all related. There was so much inbreeding for so long that it was difficult to tell. Further, data published by the Center for Immigration Studies revealed that over 8 in 10 households headed by Somali refugees in Minnesota are on one or more forms of American taxpayer-funded welfare, which added to the growing scandal. And then you had Obama step in and import another 50,000 and settled them all in Minnesota so he could create a voting bloc in that area. That's where Ilhan Omar came from. And as I explained on Wednesday, Ilhan Omar was a refugee, a child. Her family was a refugee because they were of the aristocracy, the ruling class in Somalia, and they were in fact escaping, but they weren't escaping government oppression. They were escaping justice from the people. The people wanted to administer justice against the Omar family. And they managed to escape to the US, where they just reassumed their role as the aristocracy, and they've been ruling the Somali class ever since. Ilhan Omar is a well trained imam. I don't know if you know what an imam is, but it's kind of like, well, it's a lawyer, right? It's a lawyer, somebody like a Sadducee of ancient times, very well schooled in semantics, the art of conversation and coercion. And that's Omar. That's why you can't nail her down. You can't argue with her. You can't find a position of advantage against her because she's a master at using the language against, and as it turns out, using our own laws against us. And what you have to do is just see through all of that, and you have to arrest them and deport them. And I think that's probably happening as we speak. Yes, there's a lot of pressure from the president to do it, but there's also pressure from Tom Homan to do it, and there's pressure from Minnesotans to do it because not all Minnesotans are hanging with the Somalis. They're not. They're not supportive of this. They don't like to see their money stolen from their property taxes, which, by the way, we're going to go up again. I think 6.5% this year. Yeah, their property taxes were going to go up this year. Why? Because they are sending the money to Somalia. Yeah, they're sending the property tax money of landowners in Minneapolis and in Minnesota to Somalia. And the landowners of Minnesota are pissed off about it. They would rather have their money back and not have their property taxes raised to pay for paramilitary, military, and terrorist organizations in Somalia. The news isn't telling you that. I'm telling you that. And this is something which begins the news week. You think that the news week starts tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. with Breitbart News Radio, but it doesn't. It starts tonight on America Free Radio. Everybody else will be catching up in about 8 hours. You're here because you want to be ahead of all. That's what's happening. Uh, does the U.S. Constitution cover inbreds? Has nothing to do with it, Tatanka Dave. Absolutely nothing to do with it. Whether they're inbreds or not, it doesn't matter. What the U.S. Constitution deals with are citizens, citizens of the United States subject to the jurisdiction thereof. And as it turns out, Somalis are not. They're subject to the jurisdiction of Somalia. They're living for and by and of Somalia. Well, very funny, JCW. They're from Kentucky. What are you talking about? That's a cruel. I know a lot of Kentuckians, and that's only partial. So we have other issues as we near the end of 2025. We should be celebrating all of the accomplishments that we've done in the last 11 months here in this country. And we should keep our eyes focused forward, not behind us. One of the things that we need to pay attention to is the big, beautiful bill. Now, there's a lot in that bill, some of which you are familiar with and some of which you are not familiar with. But starting January 3rd, there'll be no tax on tips, there'll be no tax on overtime, and there'll be no tax on Social Security. I don't know if you know any waitresses, dated any waitresses, or married to any waitresses, but they are very grateful for this because that's about 8.5% raise for them. That's pretty crazy, isn't it? You work for cash tips, and the restaurant is required by the IRS to take 8.5% of the receipts that these waitresses handle at the restaurant. Like if you get $100 worth of food, the restaurant has to take that receipt and they have to tax 8.5% of it as income to the waitress, whether or not she got a tip. Yeah. So all that goes away. And the waitress gets to keep all those dollars and quarters and everything, the spare change that you leave behind on the table. They get to keep it all. And it's going to be a huge boost for the working poor. Because let me tell you something, the working poor mostly are waiters and waitresses. Or should I put it the other way around? Waiters and waitresses are mostly the working poor. You don't see very many of them driving BMWs or living in homes. All right. So the other thing we have to worry about is while President Trump was in exile for 4 years, after he won the 2020 election but was forced into exile at Mar-a-Lago, he was able to take care of some things. He was still able to meet with and train his cabinet. He was still able to meet with and communicate with world leaders, and because they would come to Mar-a-Lago and talk with him and build a relationship with him and golf with him. But he did not have his hands on the levers of power in this country. So it was a little difficult to actually run the country while you're in exile, and it was a little frustrating to watch the auto pen destroy this country because the bureaucracies literally took over the presidency. And just because the facts point in that direction, just because the evidence was not in charge of the country, that it was the bureaucracies that were in charge of the country, the damage is done. Okay, the damage is done. Dead people are still dead. The bankrupt are still bankrupt. The money is still stolen. It's not going to be recovered more than likely. We're talking billions, billions, and billions of dollars. The damage is done. So you could go back and say, well, everything Joe Biden did is now null and void. So what? So the hell what? Everybody's still dead. Everyone's still dead. Okay? Millions and millions of people were permanently injured by the jab. You can't get that back. just because it was corrupt, just because the fascists were able to run that bureaucracy, force our businesses to close, take our websites away from us, silence our voices, silence the doctors, suppress the truth of what ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine could do for you. The damage is done. All those people still have myocarditis. All those kids are still dead. 73% of the dead and dying today are dying as a result of injuries from the jab. They might have lived a few years with it, but believe me, when they die, their bodies are full of those clots. They manage to work around it in a diminished way, but when the autopsies are done, their bodies are loaded. 73% of the dead, which is about how many people were jabbed. Like I said, the damage is done. So we go back and void a few executive orders and a few pardons that the auto pen was responsible for. So what? That's the problem. The damage is done. But besides the assault on the innocent American, we also opened the doorway to terrorist organizations to come inside this country. When Trump became president, one of the first things that he did, I mean, if you'll recall, way back in December, well, way back in January and February of this year, the first thing that President Trump did is he destroyed the remaining uh, remnants of ISIS. There were still some left over from his first term, and he destroyed them. But it doesn't matter because a lot of them moved here to this country, and they're in cells all over this country. So, what we have seen is the deaths of U.S. troops in Syria underscore a continuing threat from the Islamic State militants, this organization that Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton built after stealing billions of dollars worth of missiles, rockets, and grenades from Libya and using American taxpayer money and intel to help build the Islamic State, to try to build a caliphate for Islam to take over the world. Uh, and there's a complexity in this environment of conflict. Okay, that's very difficult to figure out. A former U.S. Army Special Forces officer, his name is Darren Gaub. He was asked by host Rob Astorino. You know who Rob is. He works for Newsmax, does a very good job. When ISIS terrorists might threaten the U.S. homeland here in our neighborhoods, and he immediately responded, "They are already here. They're all here. They've already set up. They already have their money. They already have their weapons. They already have their organizations and their training. And these people have already seen blood elsewhere. American blood is no different than blood they've spilled in other places around the world." We actually just had one of the White House not very long ago visiting the president. So that's one of the problems that you've got in Syria is it's basically mostly ISIS run. So Obama, his organization ISIS is alive and well. And you know, whether it's the government or a terrorist organization, we can't tell the difference between the two now, can we? So, two U.S. soldiers and an American civilian interpreter were killed yesterday during an attack in the Palmyra area while participating in an anti ISIS mission alongside Syrian partner forces. During the segment, Gaub argued that ISIS linked forces remain entrenched in parts of Syria and described the region as effectively ISIS run, especially since Bashar al Assad is gone and that iron hand is now not there to chase them down and cut their hands off. while also alleging severe sectarian violence against Alawite and Christian communities in the country. And we're seeing it elsewhere too. We're seeing Christians systematically murdered, churches burned. He then widened the discussion to Venezuela, claiming terrorist networks and hostile ideological actors operate there, and warning that oil and drug trafficking can function as funding streams for terrorism and other illicit activity reaching into the United States. In response to this, of course, hang on one second, I got a bleep from my, want to be sure that, well, I don't know why they're talking over us. Hopefully somebody at the studio realizes this because we are on. Second, I connected to my stream. There we go. Now we're in the right stream. Far out. X squared radio. That's me. Sorry, we have Studio A and Studio B at Revolution Radio, and I was connected to Studio A, and that is not me tonight. Studio B tonight. So now everything's under control. Everything's all right. Slight reactor leak. Everything's under control. All right. Pat is in Foxhole. He said Ilhan Omar is talking a lot of shit, dog whistling, etc. That is going to start some shit if she is not dealt with. I absolutely, totally agree with that. Uh, unless she is dealt with and deported, we're going to see a lot more out of Ilhan Omar, what my friends call illegal Omar. Illegal Omar. So the bottom line, well, what we saw President Trump do over the last few days is helicopters seized one of their underground ghost oil tankers. What I mean by ghost, ships at sea often sail under different countries' flags, like they sail under Panamanian flags or they sail under a New Guinea flag instead of US or Venezuelan or Cuban or whatever. So there's a ghost fleet of oil tankers out there that are transporting Venezuelan oil from Venezuela to countries who are buying that oil. And of course, that cash flow is exactly what's funding these terrorist organizations. So, in order to clamp down on this, we're not only blowing up the drug boats because that's really interrupting the cash flow stream, we're also beginning to seize the oil tankers. That's why Maduro called it Pirates of the Caribbean. Yeah, it's piracy. For what? So we took their oil, we confiscated their oil, and it doesn't really hurt anybody. Well, it doesn't really hurt Venezuela because they got the cash. What you have to do is you have to steal the cash. We don't care if they export the oil. Send it all you want, but we're going to steal the cash. You don't get any money from it, then it doesn't do any good. In this case, we stole the oil and the cash went right to where it was supposed to go. Now, eventually, buyers of that oil are going to say, hey, you know, what's up? We didn't get oil, we want our money back. And that's going to go a long way with Senor Maduro. But you can see that President Trump is applying pressure, lots of pressure on these terrorist organizations. And eventually, what's going to happen is the pressure is going to exceed the of the vessel, like a pressure cooker that you pressurize. Eventually, what's going to happen is it's going to explode. As President Trump and Pete Hegseth with the Department of War apply pressure to the Maduro cash flow, which, by the way, is also the Democrat cash flow, because Democrats are the ones that are benefiting from this flow of dark money, not the Republicans. The Democrats are. That's how they're able to support their down ballot candidates wonder how they get elected. I mean, really seriously wonder, like, how the holy hell did this person who's illiterate, stupid, and can't put two words together in a sentence without sounding like a hood rat, how do they get elected? How the hell do they get elected? How does Jasmine Crotchet get elected? Where's she getting her money from? It's coming from these illegal networks. That's where it's coming from. How do you think she's able to raise 10 to 15 million dollars to run for Senate in Texas? You know, Texas is a hell of a Senate race. It's not like North Carolina. That could take $6, $7 million to run for North Carolina. Texas is enormous. It's a country. It's a in and of itself. She's going to run for Senate in Texas. If she stands any chance at all, she's got to raise 10 million. Where the hell do you think that money's going to come from? Other hood rats? No, it's not going to come from them. It's going to come from dark money networks. And that's what needs to be confiscated. That's what needs to be shut down. So President Trump is working on it. I promise you that. My sources say if we can get Pam Bondi replaced, and uh, I'll tell you why no. I've met this person personally. I've spent a couple days with this person on the road. This person is extremely smart, solid integrity, and knows every inch of the prosecutorial highway. And that's Sidney Powell. You can say what you want about her. You can, excoriate her. She's sharp, like a rat, sharp at both ends. And she would laugh at that, by the way. She has a fantastic sense of humor, but she's absolutely brutal when it comes to putting you in jail. And that's who we need. We do not need another Fox News contributor. I'm sorry. Who gets tired of looking at Pam Bondi on camera? Almost nobody. But we don't want that. We don't want a Fox News contributor. We want Elliot Ness. We want somebody who will begin to apply RICO statutes and take these people down, take their car, take their bank accounts, take their houses, and lots of houses, take their money, shut them down, put a gag in their mouth, put them under the jail where we never hear from them, like you would a gangster. And if we have to go after Maduro, I call it Operation Noriega. Remember who Manuel Noriega was? He was a badass drug lord, just like Maduro. George Bush went down to Panama, pushed the cops, pushed the military out of the way, arrested his ass, and hauled him to Leavenworth. And that's exactly what needs to happen to Maduro. Never to be heard from again. And it could happen. It could happen by dawn. It could happen by dawn. We know right where he is. We know what he has with him. And I promise you 100% confidence we could put him in cuffs in an orange jumpsuit and he would be gone by sunup. It just needs to happen. Somebody needs to have the balls to do it. And Pam Bondi, sorry to say, just doesn't have it. Doesn't have it. Uh, you remember, oh, I can't remember what date it was. I believe I was on Awake Nation with Eve Sublik. I'm on that program. I start the news week, at 8 a.m. on Monday morning. So that's where I'll be tomorrow morning on Awake Nation. And if you want to join me, all you have to do is go to the website, americafreeradio.com, and click on the Awake Nation banner. Boom, 8 p.m. Eastern, and we start the week right there. But the point I'm trying to make is I made a prediction on that show. I just had a feeling that there would be a powerful, important, brazen assassination attempt. And a few days later, Robert Fico was shot 5 times and survived. And he survived. Well, he's a Slovak prime minister, if you want to know who Robert Fico is. Tough guy. Takes 5 rounds, and came right back kicking. And yesterday he said he will block any European Union solution that finds Ukraine's military expenditures, accusing Western Europe of treating Russian and Ukrainian lives as being worth shit. That's his official statement, by the way, translation, and prolonging what he described as senseless bloodshed. Robert Fico's a badass, as far as I'm concerned. Anybody that can take 5 rounds and come right at us. He said he has held an almost hour-long phone conversation with European Council President Antonio Costa, focused on EU funding for Ukraine. While he spoke about money for the war in Ukraine, I kept repeating the senseless daily killing of hundreds of thousands of Russians and Ukrainians. If for Western life of a Russian or is worth shit, I do not want to be part of such a Western Europe. I don't know if you understand the importance of words, because if you look at the EU, the European Union, it is a blue flag with a circle of gold stars. There is no Slovakia. There is no Germany. There's no France. There's no Italy. There's no Greece. There's no Hungary. There's no Romania, just the gold stars. The idea was originally that we'll create one currency, the and we will peg all the other currencies, the mark, the Swiss franc, the French franc. Will freeze all those currencies. Everything will be pegged to the. It'll be a euro from currencies will be pegged. And by the way, those national banks are really feeling the crunch right now. All of those currencies are worth way more than their face value, but they're pegged and they can't unpeg them because the Union won't let them. And so these countries are all being held to some level of poverty, depression, European Union. So to hear Robert Fico, okay, of Slovakia say, if you continue this policy of sending Ukrainians with your weapons or your euros to go fight Russians and die, I don't want to be part of that European Union. Well, we've already had one country, and that's the UK, back out of the European Union, right? Remember the Brexit, the British exit from the European Union? Well, there are other countries thinking about that too, and evidently Slovakia, they don't want to be part of it. So the Post uh, accompanied the publication with a formal letter sent by Robert Fico to all EU prime ministers ahead of the next European meeting, where the European Commission's proposals to secure Ukraine's financial needs for 2026 and 2027, including the possible use of frozen Russian assets. They're going to steal the Russian assets that they froze and give them to Ukraine. Now, I can tell you right now, that's not going to be very popular. Not going to be popular with Putin. It's not going to be the bankers that are handling that money. Nobody wants to do that except for the European Union thugs. If you take the Russians' money and you give it to somebody else, do you think the Russians are going to forgive you because you're following orders? No, they're not. The Russians are going to hold you responsible and they're going to take their revenge against you. And it's not going to be pretty. So, anyway, Mr. Robert Fico stated that Slovakia would not back any such includes funding Ukraine military expenses. But the upcoming European Council, he said, I am not in the position to support a solution to Ukraine's financial needs that would include covering Ukraine's military expenses for the coming years. To rehabilitate, to rebuild cities, to build roads, to rebuild infrastructure, okay. To feed people that are displaced somehow, okay, but not for weapons. So Fico argued that there was no military solution to the conflict and that continued arms financing was extending the war, which it absolutely is. I don't know if you remember this, but there was the Minsk agreement between Zelensky and Putin, and they both signed it. This was way back in 2022. Yeah, I know. People hadn't even begun dying yet, right? Yeah, exactly. Like in the spring of 2022. And what happened? Victoria Nuland went to Boris Johnson and said, "You get your ass up there to Kiev and you tear up that agreement and tell Mr. Zelensky we will settle this on the battlefield." And that's exactly what he did. Boris Johnson followed orders, flew to Kiev, sat down with Zelensky, told him to tear up that agreement and tell Putin we'll settle this on the battlefield. And Putin said, "Okay, so be it. That's what we'll do." And that's what they've been doing, settling it on the battlefield. And you lost. They lost. Putin went in and saved all the Russian speaking peoples in those 5 states on the eastern side of the Ukraine, known as the Donbass. And all those people held their elections, voted to be annexed to Russia, and those elections were monitored by the UN, and everything was a-okay, military coercion or anything like that. Those people had their conventions, sang their songs, raised their flags. That was it. It was over. But Zelensky doesn't want to cede any territory. That proud son of a bitch would rather send people to die and push those ethnic Russians, which, by the way, have been there for 300 years, longer than we've been a nation, by the way, and continue to send young Ukrainians to die. So while he also warned against using the frozen Russian assets for the reasons that I just mentioned to you, okay, this could undermine his efforts. It's just going to piss the Russians off. They're not going to want to do any kind of peace agreement with someone who just stole billions of dollars from them and gave it to their enemy. How happy would you be about that after you sold your product, oil or grain or machinery or whatever's you built? You never paid for it because these European thugs stole your money and then it was your enemy. How happy would you be? You would not be happy at all. You would not be happy at all. By the way, Trump didn't have anything to do with this. It was all done by the bureaucracies. I don't think Biden had a clue what was going on. Uh, of course, Robert Fico and others like me, maybe, maybe these funds could be used for post-war reconstruction. As I said, rebuilding roads, infrastructure, opening schools, putting in gas. I could see it. I could see it, and so could Russia if that money was used for that. But to use for weapons, no, it's not good. And by the way, there are over 200,000 Ukrainian refugees living in Slovakia. They're not happy about it. Nobody likes Ukrainians living in their country. I don't know why. I think Ukrainian, most beautiful women in the world. Maybe it's the Ukrainian or the Slovakian wives that don't want the Ukrainian females living in their country. Anyway, he reiterated that Slovakia's support for Ukraine's ascension to the European Union, while noting that some member states recently voicing reservations about reservations about early membership. It's sort of like, I don't know how to put it, it would be like Puerto Ricans if we decided to make Rico a full state and give them a voting congressman and make them the 51st state. Do they deserve it? Maybe, but we do give a lot of aid to Puerto Rico, but actually we give more aid to Canada, and Canada's not a 51st state. So this is basically the same thing. So Fico said his position was final, not change under pressure or prolonged negotiations. He said, I cannot and I will not, under any pressure, including getting shot 5 times, endorse any solution to support Ukraine's military expenditures in which the Slovak Republic participate. Not happy about it. He doesn't want to do it. The European Council has not publicly responded to Fico's remarks, but I can tell you my feeling is, and I'm pretty close to being correct about this, I'm pretty sure Fico's not going to bend. Robert Fico is not going to allow Slovakian money to be used to buy bullets for Ukraine because he knows what the bullets are going to do. They're going to be shot at Russians. And Americans should be, while Americans were like, okay, lethal weapons to Ukraine so they can fight off the Russians. And what were they doing? They were making incursions into Russia, into Kurds, other areas, using tactical launch deep into Russia. Blow up what? Not even military targets, to blow up apartment buildings and shopping centers. Who the hell do they think they are doing that? All it really does is make the Russians mad. And what do the Russians do? Well, they're in the middle of peace talks with President Trump. Okay, so we have a great phone call. President Trump says, I'm very happy phone call. Hangs up. Russia launches several missiles over and kicks the shit out of Ukraine. It kills 5 people. It destroys a couple of city blocks. And Trump says, are they doing that? And Putin says, I'm doing it because they're attacking my country. And no one's doing anything about it. No one's stopping them. In fact, it's your missiles, your rockets, your satellites, your personnel that are doing the attacking. So guess what, President Trump? I'm going to be as nice as I can be on the telephone, and then I'm going to kick your ass. Doesn't that make sense to you? It makes perfect sense to me. So when you stop sending the weapons to Ukraine, and Ukraine stops killing people in Russia and killing ethnic groups, guess what? The ceasefire goes into effect. It's done. It's done. Putin won what he has won, and the people have already had their vote. They've already got the purple finger in the air. It's done, and Zelensky needs to be gone. I don't think he's a legitimate force in Ukraine, and I just think he needs to be gone. Take Zelensky, we take care of Maduro, and then we take care of the sleeper cells inside the United States. We hunt down ISIS city by city. There's about 22 cities in this country that have ISIS strongholds, and they could do and will do exactly what has been done in Syria, right? You're going to have somebody hollering Allahu Akbar and National Guard shooting cops, shooting people at the mall, shooting people at a Christmas parade or a high school football game. And so what? You have all these innocent people dead and afraid to leave their homes, and you could have stopped it. You could have stopped it. We already know where these people are. We already know who they are. We already know how much money have they made, who sent them, who's holding on to the money. We already know all of this. We just have to take action. And what we need is the Department of Justice who's willing to do that. As I've explained many times on this program, human society throughout history has gone through a 4-part cycle. Mercy, peace, war. Mercy is just somewhere at the end of the one, there's enough dead and there's enough smoke and there's enough pain somebody stands up and yells for mercy. Comes. Mercy comes, and the sky clears, and the blood drops, and the graves are dug, and society moves on. And as it moves on, it puts force in place to take the people that cannot and will not obey the law, the 2% of society that commits all the crime over and over and over again, puts them in jail, and the park's safe, and mama can go to the grocery with the kids and not worry about being raped or followed or robbed, and you don't have to lock your car anymore. Why? Because the bad guys are in jail. Not like in Charlotte, North Carolina, where they just keep letting them go. Commit assault? No problem. Commit murder? No problem. Stab somebody, rape somebody? No problem. Go back out on the street 30, 40, 50, 70 times. It doesn't matter. Incarceration is racist, they say. Uh huh. And these people go out over and over and over again. Somebody dies. Still more than one person dies. And then they can let them out again. That's because there's no justice. And what happens is when the people realize there's a class of society that is above the law, that will not obey the law and is not subject to the law, and they're not always politicians, but are usually politicians, then it gets to the point where we say, okay, this is not working. The cops aren't working. Justice isn't working. And so then the people call for war. And there we go. There's your cycle. Mercy, peace, justice. And when we don't get justice, we go to war. War is just justice denied. It's the final justice. All right. If you won't give us justice, we're going to come and we're going to kick your ass and break things until you give up, you surrender. And you're either going to be dead or you're going to be a prisoner of war, right? Mercy, peace, justice, war. That's where we are. We are right this close to the end of the justice phase. And if somebody with authority doesn't stand up and say, enough, that is it, it's done, we're not letting these bad guys out anymore. When that happens, we're going to go to war. In Minnesota. Not when we have a solution, not when we know what the problem is and we know what the solution is. All we have to have is courage, is courage. I, for one, have the courage, but I'm in North Carolina. I guarantee there's somebody like me in Minnesota. There's somebody like me in Minnesota that is saying that's enough. These Somalis have to go. Send them back, less their money, pull back all the money that you stole from us, and get them the hell out of our country. And then start with the sleeper cells. We know where they are. We know who they are. We know where they're staying. We know where they're banking. Get them out of here. That can be done. And it's not just Ohio. It's not just Maine. It's not just Minnesota. What would you say if I told you, well, if I revealed to you, let me check on my time here. Pretty good instincts. We have 1 minute till the top of the hour. I'll start this next story at the top of the hour. Right now, we're going to take a quick break. It'll take about 3 or 4 minutes to get done, and then we'll come back after this. Meanwhile, I'll keep checking the chat room, and we'll be right back after this. Please don't go away. More America Free Radio right after this.
Wednesdays, 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern Time on Studio A, because we come to this table of life to learn in the best possible way and experience this gift of life from our mutual Creator. So let's learn together and build our best future with Conversations with Eagle Flower. Wednesdays, 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern Time, Studio A on Revolution Radio.
Join Revolution Radio every Sunday at 5 p.m. Studio B for Strange Universe. For Strange Universe.
Are you interested in the paranormal, murder mystery, real natural law? Do you enjoy interviews with amazing guests? Then join Crypt Rick every Monday night, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on Revolution Radio. Studio A, freedomslips.com. Crypt Rick's I've been thinking. Welcome to the Crypt.
The rooster has crowed out the opening bars of a new day. You've dragged yourself out of bed. You turn on your device. You want to know what's going on in the world. But you're hungry for a topical show that serves up those breakfast headlines just that little bit differently. Do you like your early morning news the way you like your eggs over easy? Served with slathers of salsa-like sass? Do you like those first headlines of the day to deliver a punch as powerful as that first cup of joe? Join Mitchell Bupp at his breakfast table for Revolution in the Morning, where he will digest, dissect, and dismantle those new day's national and global news headlines with razor-sharp relish. Find Mitchell here at revolution.radio every Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday morning, 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on Studio B.
Thank you for listening to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. Any commercial advertising you may hear in this program is of the sole discretion and benefit of the host of whose program you are listening to. Revolution Radio does not endorse any commercial products, nor does it accept monetary compensation for on-air advertising of commercial products, nor will it ever. We are and shall remain 100% listener supported. Any product advertising on this program are considered used at higher risk, and Revolution Radio shall not be held liable for any claims or damages received from any product advertised within this program. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
Thanks for hanging in there while we took that short break. Now back to America Free Radio with host Brooks Agnew here at Revolution Radio.
Thank you so much, Revolution Radio, for that great station identification. We would be nowhere without our millions of Revolution Radio listeners. Revolution Radio is the number one listener supported network in the entire country. And you can help support it by going to freedomslips.org, freedomslips.org, and become a patron of ours. All you have to do is give us $2-3 a month, and if a couple 100,000 of you did it, we could save the world. Literally, we could save the world. NPR was taking money out of your check for decades. Well, all that's over with. Now you could do it yourself by sending a couple bucks a month to freedomslips.org. Please do it and watch us save the world. Okay, right now, what we're going to do, those of you listening by audio, listen closely. Those of you watching on video, this is no problem whatsoever because you're already looking at my website, americafreeradio.com. And we're going to click on where it says Brooks Agnew's homepage. You're going to be at the right place because it says right on the cover, I'm Brooks Agnew, and there's my picture. Okay, and there's two blue buttons on the cover. You'll see it on your phone, your tablet, your PC, your laptop. And all you have to do is pay close attention. It's easy to do. One is get my free newsletter. Come on, guys. It doesn't get any easier than that. I know you get a lot of newsletters, and I don't really care about that. All I care about is you sign up for mine because I give you a link to tonight's program in case you missed part of it or you want to share it with your friends. And I also give you links to goodies that will keep you healthy and save you money. The other one is you can actually get Ivan and fenbendazole without a prescription. If you click on that button, like I just did, it's going to take you to a page where you can buy ivermectin or fenbendazole for yourself without a prescription. Now, you already know how hard this is because you've been out there looking for it. You're going to spend out the ass for it, and I'm selling it at wholesale prices. Now, one of the things you'll notice is the ivermectin, I'm still showing the Indian box. That's probably going to stay that way for a little while. I still have some stock coming in, and I need to go through that. But I have located a domestic source, a U.S. source, and we're going to be making the transition to that. Some of you have already received it. You can tell that the package is way better. The product and the certificate analysis is right here on the website. All you have to do is click on that button and verify for yourself that this is 99% pure ivermectin. Okay, this is the right stuff for human use. And the other is the fenbendazole. I don't know if you've been out there looking. We used to be able to get it on Amazon. You can't get it there anymore. You can't get it there anymore. I'm one of the few sources in the country where you can get it, and I'm selling it at wholesale prices. So if you're combining these two, ivermectin and fenbendazole, to fight things like, cancer, this is the only place you can get them. Now, you can get it other places, but you're going to spend a lot more money, like double the money. This is just a local word of mouth network. This is the only ad you're ever going to hear for it right here on the radio program. I don't run ads on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter, none of that. Everything is word of mouth. I wish I could reach more people. Believe me, I want to save more lives, but you know and I know the hazards of doing that. So here we are. The two buy now buttons is very easy to do. Also, don't forget about the True Niagen. I would go get my bottle. It's right over there. I take 600 milligrams of this every day, and I have since 2018, since the summer of 2018. And I stopped aging. In fact, I can testify that I've actually reverse aged a little bit because I can go back and look at my pictures from 2015, 2016. I look younger than I did then. And even my doctors are like, "Are you lying about your age?" No, I'm not. I'm not 50, I'm 70. Okay. You want to stay young and be young for a couple more decades, maybe longer, because we don't really know how long this stuff lasts. This is the supplement for you, True Niagen. And don't forget about Insulis. I have my bottle right here on my desk. I put a few drops under my tongue a couple times a day, and it lowers my A1C number. Subdural, a sublingual, it goes right underneath the tongue. It goes straight into the bloodstream and helps keep that A1C number down below 5. Don't forget about Himalaya toothpaste. You may not hear about it anywhere else but here. And frankly, I don't know if we sell a lot of it or not because I don't get diddly shit from Amazon for it. But do away with the fluoride in your life. Don't put that Crest or Aquafresh or Colgate in your mouth. Stop that. Go with the fluoride-free toothpaste. I promise you, you'll be satisfied with it. Same cost. It costs the same money as Crest, same money as Colgate, same money as Aquafresh, but you don't put the fluoride in your mouth. Okay? And don't forget about the Blue Boost. You want that laser focus to stay focused on your projects, whether you're painting a painting or writing a book or composing music. This is the stuff. This is the limitless pill. You take the Blue Boost and it gives you that laser focus. Okay, let's get back to it. Hold on one second while we get here. Go back to solo, and we're good. All right. So I want to resume where we were. Oh, East Coast 20 says they know FenBen works. They want all those products removed. Yes, I know they want them removed. I don't really know who they are, but used to be pretty plentiful. You could buy it on Amazon any day, twice on Sunday. You can't find it now. And when it disappears from Amazon, it's disappearing from everywhere. We have it. You want it. This is where you get it. Let's see here. Yes, Delamio, we know all about the rhinos. We know who they are. And President Trump, by the way, is calling them out. This 2026 is going to be a different campaign year. Normally, the president is not on the ballot. This midterm election, President Trump is on the ballot. He absolutely is on the ballot. And he's going to be campaigning like it was 2024. You're going to see rallies at least once a month for the entire year. Only Trump's not going to be rallying for himself. Believe it or not, all that money, all that time, all that sacrifice, and wearing his ass out is for the down ballot. It's for the down ballot. And by the way, some of that down ballot for the Republicans is to primary some of the rhinos. Not kidding. Now, the GOP, they're not going to do that. The GOP has in their charter that they do not primary incumbents. That's in their charter. They don't primary incumbents. It doesn't matter how talented you are. If that guy wants to run for reelection, the GOP has to support him. That's the charter. But President Trump's not part of that. And he's going to be raising money for these down ballot primary challengers, and we're going to get some of these rhinos out of the way. And we're going to start getting some business done. The other thing that President Trump is lobbying for, and very effectively, I might add, is to end the filibuster. No, it's not constitutional. It is a Senate rule. It's a Senate custom, actually. And it's been around since about, I think the first time it was mentioned was 1837, or maybe it was 1937. I can't remember now. But in any case, it's been there primarily to protect the minority party. And I can guarantee it was the Democrats that put it in place in one of the few times that they did not control the Senate. They put the filibuster in place in order to prolong the debate and take the momentum out of the majority party's efforts to get legislation passed or get people appointees approved. The filibuster is obsolete and it needs to be removed. By God, the majority party won. The people of this country put them in power, and they're the ones that should be able to pass the laws and appoint the people that they want, judges and attorneys and cabinet members as they want. The majority should be able to do that. The minority should not. Now, I say that because you go back and look at Barack Obama, he tried to get Merchan approved as a Supreme Court justice. Mitch McConnell in the minority party said, "No, that ain't going to happen. We're going to filibuster that, and your term is going to expire." And Ruth Bader Ginsburg's not going to be replaced on your watch. She's going to be replaced on President Trump's watch. So you're saying, "Oh, well, the filibuster is a good thing." I mean, the Democrats, I promise you, if the Democrats get control of Congress again, they will do away with the filibuster. Stop worrying about what the Democrats are going to do with it. If the Republicans can do away with the filibuster and get some legislation passed and get some U.S. attorneys and judges and legislation approved and passed by the majority Republican in the Senate, Democrats won't get anywhere close to those offices. There's no way Democrats will win elections if they don't have the filibuster as their tool. So I don't know what you're worried about. Trust me, just saying, "Oh, we can't do it because the Democrats will then be able to do it as well." They're going to do it anyway. So you might as well preempt it and take control. So let's make that happen. La la la. Yes, I get that too. Some of the famous people out there, Sean and uh, Nino, and yeah, I listen to them. They're all good guys. They have great talent. They're making good money at what they do. But nothing that we do here on this program is behind a paywall. Everything is free. Everything is open, and nothing is classified on this program. If I hear it, you'll hear it. I'm not going to hold back anything. That's what you'll get from Sean Ryan and Nino Rodriguez and all that. If it's classified, they won't mention it. I say bullshit. If I hear about it, it's already unclassified enough. You're going to hear about it. People tune into this program because they want the truth, and they've been doing it for over 20 years, a lot longer than those guys have been around. All right, let's see. By the way, I want prayers to go out there for Scott Adams. So anybody that knows of him or has watched his program, hell of a guy, does it out of the goodness of his heart. He is a tremendous individual, fighting to the very past the end, in my opinion. Uh, please add Scott Adams to your prayers, and let's see if we can't get him back in the chair. He's going through some hellacious cancer treatment right now. Let's see if we can share our prayers and our hopes and get him through it and back in the chair. That's right. No, I thought about Substack and all that stuff. Not going to happen. Not going to happen. If you can't tune into this program, to hell with you. Okay? It's free. It's everywhere. It's on X. It's on Facebook. It's on Rumble. It's on YouTube. It's on Foxhole. It's on Truth Refugee. And it's all free. And if you missed part of tonight's program, no problem. Archived for nothing at all these sources. You can watch it again and again. You can share it with your friends. Please, this is how we grow. Forget about the algorithms, forget about all that bullshit. You don't have to do any of that because it doesn't matter what you do. It doesn't matter what you do. TikTok, X, Facebook, they're not going to help us whatsoever. It's only up to you. You have to counteract the algorithm. You have to override it and force it to your friends. Right. Well, I don't know about the medical malpractice. You have cancer, you got cancer, okay? And you just have to overcome it. Thank you, old dog. Best place to do with Brooks Agnew twice a week and watch Late Like Me. That's cool. Thank you. Thank you, Boy Dogs, too. Good vote of confidence there. I appreciate it. We would be nowhere without you guys. All right, so I want to talk a little bit. We were talking about Minneapolis and Minnesota. We're talking about Ohio. We're talking about Maine and the problems they're going through with respect to illegal aliens packing up the taxpayers' money, including property taxes. By the way, Minneapolis is a pretty high tax area, and they were going to raise their property taxes 6.5% this year. 6.5 freaking percent. And guess where the money was going? Yeah, it was going to Somalia. They were taking your property taxes and sending it to Somalia. You're not getting fire protection. You're not getting police. You're not getting your potholes fixed in the roads. You're not getting a new power plant to lower your electricity bills. The money was going to Somalia. Thank you, Tampon Tim. Have you had enough? Have you seen enough, Minnesota? Why don't you do something about it? I can't do anything about it. I'm in North Carolina. You have to do something about it. Oh, Cindy Who too is out there. That's good. I'm glad you made it. I appreciate you so much for being here. Well, the problem is also in New York City, in New York State. Now, this addresses directly my statement that I said slavery. Yeah, slavery. That's people who work for dirt or nothing, or for the privilege of being here, is alive and well in the United States. In fact, there are more slaves in the United States right now than there ever were prior to the Civil War. So if you want to talk about reparations, you can kiss my ass, because all those people that are asking for reparations right now are so happy that the illegals are here picking the cotton and taking all the cheap jobs. Was that racist to say? Well, too fucking bad. Slavery is alive and well in New York. It's true. They don't want to pay the prevailing wage for a truck driver. Yes, the U.S. Department of Transportation is getting the DOT, the all-powerful DOT. They're getting ready to pull all the funding from the state of New York. It's about $73 million a year in federal highway funding. They're going to pull it all from New York. You know why? Because they did an audit and they found that 50%, not 50% of the commercial driver's licenses for truckers are being issued to illegal immigrants. They can't read and they can't speak English. So what New York does, if an applicant comes to them and they have a work authorization for 30 days, 60 days, a year, yeah, you can come here, you can make some money until we figure out what we're going to do with you. New York, the state of New York, automatically issues them an 8-year commercial driver's license. So these guys that would normally make $1.50, $1.57 a mile for every mile that they drive, they're making about 40 cents, 50 cents, something like that. They're slaves. They're slaves, and they're displacing guys that really have CDLs, guys that can read and speak English and know how to drive a truck. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy said 2 days ago during a press conference at DOT headquarters, he said this is contrary to law. But we also found that New York many times won't even verify whether they have a work authorization. They don't care. They don't care. They have a visa or they're in the country illegally, no paperwork whatsoever. Hablo español, no hable inglés. So they're just giving 8-year commercial driver's licenses to people who are coming through their DMV. and sending them out on American roadways, and they are killing people. They're making left-hand turns where they shouldn't. They're merging. They're running into the back of other vehicles. They don't have the training. They don't have the experience. They're whipping 80,000 pounds around our highways like they're hauling a lawnmower, and they're killing people. So Duffy's warning came after the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration analyzed 200 non-domiciled commercial driver's licenses. These are CDLs for you in New York, issued by the New York DMV officially, and found that 107 were issued illegally. Now, DOT officials are also investigating whether a Chinese national accused of causing a fatal pileup in Tennessee was illegally issued a CDL. He's in Tennessee, but he was issued his CDL in New York. You don't just drive in New York if you get a New York commercial driver's license. You can drive anywhere, even in Tennessee, even in California. Doesn't matter. You don't have to speak English. You don't have to read English. Just point that 80,000 pounds in the right direction and mash the pedal. So, Secretary Duffy has given New York Governor Kathy Hochul and other officials 30 days to revoke all the CDLs issued to the illegals, pay any new licenses for learner's permits from being issued, or pause any, and conduct their own full investigation. And if they don't, $73 million in federal funding could be pulled. Now, there are a couple things to stop this. First of all, Governor Hochul is going to say, that's an invasion of our privacy. You don't have any right to look at those records. And the second thing is a federal judge is going to step in and say, you can't withhold that $73 million. You better write that check and you better shut the hell up. I promise you it's going to happen tomorrow morning. You watch the news, mark my words, those two things will happen in New York and more people will die. So at the end of the day, I'm not talking about slavery. I am talking about slavery, but we're also talking about safety. We don't want slaves driving these trucks. Let me say it again. We don't want slaves driving these trucks because somebody's going to get run over, and they will, and they are. So, yes, it is about safety. I'm most concerned about that. No, I don't care about the transportation companies wanting to save $1 per mile by hiring an illegal driver. Who's going to say? Who's the illegal driver going to tell? I want the $1.57 a mile, just like that guy gets. Well, you can't have it. You can't have it because that guy speaks English and he can read and write, and he's got 10 years of driving experience. You have no experience. You can't read English. You can't speak English. And we're going to pay you 99 cents a mile. And you better shut the hell up and drive the truck. That's slavery, people. That is slavery. And our country is full of it. New York's not the only state. I would say mostly they're blue cities that are issuing these permits. And I don't have any facts to back that up, but I would say that's my personal opinion. Anybody in the chat room disagree with me? Well, Tatanka Dave, there's no difference, okay? He said they're not slaves, they're cheap labor. They're slaves. They're slaves. They are owned by somebody and they can't get any relief. They're not being treated fairly. They're not being fed properly. They're not being housed properly. They're driving 10, 12 hours a day to drive as many miles as they can to make as much money as they can in a day. And God help us all. You know, they pull into a way station as they cross the border in from one state into the other, and they can't speak English. They can't read the documentation. And the way station operators are powerless to do anything about it. They have to be able to speak English, and This one case, they had to be able to speak Chinese. Well, I got news for you. A lot of these way station places, they don't have bilingual people that can speak Chinese. They often have bilingual people that can speak Spanish, but not Chinese. They're slaves. They're slaves. They're owned by somebody. Yes, Captain Super 8. That's correct. The H-1B visas are the same way. That's why President Trump raised the price to $100,000. He figured if somebody can afford to pay $100,000, they're bringing some skin to the game. They want a green card. They want to be a functional member of society. And if they're illegals or they've snuck into this country, they're not going to have the $100,000. So the excuse of having cheap labor to replace Americans who are applying for the same job doesn't apply. Not if that H-1B visa costs $100,000. All right. Let's see. I was talking about the EU earlier. Not really targeted by Robert Fico directly. What he was saying is, if you're going to take some of the EU's revenue and you're going to be giving it to Ukraine in the form of weapons, not reconstructive money to build roads and rebuild buildings that have been destroyed by the conflict, but weapons, I'm not interested in participating. So Fico is saying, if you're in this business, I'm out. And Fico is considered a very strong leader in his field and an example to other country leaders, Estonia, Latvia, um, Hungary, these other members of the EU, the European Union, they're going to back out too. They're going to say, I'm not putting my money in if you're using it for weapons for Ukraine. Well, Trump is also targeting the European Union. And that's exactly who they don't want challenging them. Because the Trump administration's new national security strategy was published last week. We've had a chance to review it, and it's very aggressive, actually. It sets out a broad foreign policy direction for not just the remainder of 2024, but for the rest of his term. So this is a serious multi-trillion-dollar strategy for Europe. And it doesn't just include the tariffs, okay? There's that, yes, of course, because they've been ripping us off for a long, long time when it comes to trade. But it goes beyond this because it focused on what I've been talking about for about 3 years on this program, and that is the Trans-European Army, otherwise known as NATO. For a long, long time, the U.S. has been the driving leadership, the driving economic force in NATO. And then Trump came along and said, you know what? We're tired of paying the whole bill. If you all don't value the defense of your own countries enough to pay 2% of your gross domestic product for your own defense, we're out. We're not going to pay the bill anymore. You pay your fair share, your 2%, or we're out. And so a lot of the countries said, well, hell, we got to pay. I mean, we can't hang out here defenseless while Russia will come and spank our ass. So they started putting up the money. Poland went beyond that. They went, I think, 5% of their gross domestic product to build their defense, and then military, a hell of a military. But it goes beyond that. We're this trans-European army, this NATO, has been very aggressive, and they've actually conquered. Yeah, I use the word conquered. They've actually conquered either by color revolution, economic debt traps, or force, like going in and murdering the president and disrupting the government by force. They've actually taken over 63 sovereign countries. Yeah, I know. You think the Civil War was bad with 13 states. We're talking 63 sovereign countries that were forced into NATO. No way out. And sorry to say, the United States State Department was behind most of that. Look at what Hillary Clinton did with Libya. Sent in our jets, our Air Force, and beat the shit out of the Libyan army, chased Muammar Gaddafi into the streets, and shot him in the face like a dog. And look at Libya today. Libya today is shattered. It's, from 2011 until now, that's when Hillary Clinton sent in U.S. forces as Secretary of State and beat the shit out of Libya and then stole their missiles, rockets, and grenades and shipped them to ISIS. Those are the facts. If you don't believe me, read the Charm of Favor. I wrote all about it in there, and you can watch it happen, fact by fact by fact. It's all there in the book. And by the way, it's a very exciting read, too. If you're looking for a Christmas present for somebody, Charm of Favor is a great choice. You can get it on Amazon. And the audiobook is for sale on my website at half the cost of Audible. It's a great deal. And guess what? It's the same recording, the same exact recording, with the same non-professional voice reading the story. But NATO claims to have been establishing conditions of stability within Europe. Yeah, stability like the Roman Empire. Okay, yeah, okay, we had 1,000 years of peace at the tip of a freaking spear. That's NATO. That's NATO. And they're encouraging European allies to stand on their own feet when it comes to security matters. But this document that was released last week, it also warned that Europe faces civilizational erasure. No more Germans, no more French, no more Slovakians, no more Romanians, just Europeans, right? And the issue is nobody has any heritage. Nobody has any heritage. Nobody has a language or a religion or even a currency to call their own. And all of that is trumped, no pun intended, and wiped away by mass migration, right? Censorship of speech, declining birth rates, like what is it, 1.4 Europeans being born to the average couple, where it's like 5.5 being born to Muslims. And everybody can do the math. It doesn't take a rocket scientist here. We're talking one generation, which, by the way, is 20 years for those of you trying to figure it out. One generation, and Europe is screwed. Europe is screwed. And so Trump decided to address this. Days after the official release, the Defense One website reported that a longer unreleased version of the NSS had circulated in Washington. According to the site, the unpublished version contained far more explicit political goals for reshaping Europe's future and reducing the influence of the European Union. Defense One wrote that the extended draft urged the United States to make Europe great again, proposing that Washington realign its attention toward a select group of governments ideologically closer to the Trump administration. The unpublished version, Defense One reported, stated that Austria, Hungary, Italy, and Poland were countries the United States should work more with the goal of pulling them away from the European Union. Exactly what Robert Fico was talking about. It also said the United States should support parties and movements and intellectual and cultural figures who seek sovereignty and restoration of individual European ways of life while remaining pro-American. In other words, make Poland great again. Make Hungary great again. Make Italy great again. And the last time I was in Europe, in this area, we kind of saw those efforts happening. We saw it in Greece, we saw it in Italy, we saw it in Switzerland. The peoples of those countries were focused on being Romans, being Greeks. There's a lot of talk about unique Greek culture, unique Greek uh, uh, cuisine. I was thoroughly impressed with how proudly the citizens of Greece spoke about the soil and the olives and the fish and the fruits and the tomatoes and everything that is uniquely Greek. That imports were not that important to them. What was grown and done in Greece was important to them. And the same thing in Italy. In fact, one of the guys that I spoke with at length, he didn't even call himself Italian. He called himself Roman. Roman. Yeah, it was crazy. The people were very, very focused on their heritage. And the same thing in Switzerland. We went up to Chamonix, and it's kind of a small ski village up in the Swiss Alps. Uh, a glacier is up there, and some other great stuff. And in the fall, that is in the late summer, obviously it's not active because there's no snow on the mountains. But the people of that area are very focused on their national value, their sovereignty. So the text also warns that the war has increased Europeans' exposure to external dependencies, particularly, well, Germany. Germany's an economic powerhouse, and it makes the other countries more dependent upon what Germany can do. And Germany has not done a very good job of it in the last 5 years because they've destroyed their gas-powered and their coal-powered power plants. They've shut down nuclear power plants. They lost their connection to Russian gas, and so they're in bad shape. And these countries that have relied upon Germany for that economic stability and that technological stability are suffering. The text also criticizes what it described as unrealistic expectations held by some European officials. Oh, everything is going to be great. It's going to be wonderful. The immigrants are going to assimilate. It ain't happening. It concludes that despite Europe's internal crisis, the continent remains strategically and culturally vital to the United States of America. It says encouraging its political allies in Europe to promote this revival of spirit, asserting that the growing influence of patriotic European parties gives cause for great optimism. After the Defense One report appeared, the White House moved quickly to deny the existence of any longer or alternative national security statement. Spokesman Anna Kelly said no alternative private or classified version exists. President Trump is transparent and put his signature on one NSS and clearly instructs the U.S. government to execute on his defined principles and priorities. In other words, no smoky rooms full of secret deals. Speaking to the American, let's see, I see. Krzysztof Blozak, he's a Polish MP, very well spoken. He's a leader of the right wing Confederation. He is proud about the fact that they don't have any illegals in their country. They have no immigrants in their country, and that's why they have domestic peace in Poland. He said, I can't say that I disagree with anything there in President Trump's statement. It is a continuation of Vice President J.D. Vance's Munich speech, which I agreed with completely. He said, maybe Europe needs a shock from our good old friend America to start a true debate, because there was no debate in the European mainstream. In America, you have both sides of the political spectrum. In Western Europe, there's only one side. If you have politically incorrect views, you can find yourself well, in jail, especially if you post it online, because you said too much. In England, sometimes in Germany, it happens. You get arrested for your Facebook posts. There's an Italian newspaper that spoke on Defense One's findings, highlighting the claim that the United States planned to use Italy, Austria, Hungary, and Poland as tools to dismantle the European Union, as I was saying at the beginning of my article here. Uh, and and President Trump's doing it by drawing these nations into a broader ideologically aligned group, separate from the EU, okay, more defined by their own heritage and their own. I was going to use the word pride, but that's not really the word I'm looking for. Their own history, their own binding blood of their country, which is exactly what the European Union was designed to dissolve. They were trying to wipe all that stuff away because they believed that all the wars that happened in Europe for all the thousands of years were specifically because there was this national identity, French and Germans, and uh, that identity was what was the core cause of all the wars. Now, I don't really believe that. I think Europe is not even as peaceful as it was before World War II because of the fact that the European Union has diluted, that's a good word, diluted all this nationalism in Europe. And when I was young, I used to say, wouldn't it be nice if we could be a country, a world of earthlings, instead of uh, nationalities, because with the nationalities comes a pride, and pride cometh before the fall. You get one person's pride over here and another person's pride over here. Next thing you know, both sides are offended and they're going to go to war with one another. Well, we have 50 of those in our country, 48 in the continental United States, 48 individual ideologies, right? You got Hoosiers and you got Kentuckians, you got Ohioans and you got Pennsylvanians. And yes, we have rivalries. We battle it out on the basketball court, we battle it out on the football field. Army and Navy just had their battle and Navy won. Nobody cares about that. Yes, there's state pride, school pride, but we don't go into violence because of that. We can live actually quite well and quite excitedly with that pride, wearing those letters, wearing those colors, marching in those bands. And we do it and have done it for a long, long time, and will continue to do it for centuries to come if nobody comes and kills us all. And Europe can do the same thing. So this assertion that, oh, we have all this individual, pride, individual ideologies, and that's why we had all these wars. That's not true. That is not true. What you had was evil. You had evil come to power. And when evil comes to power, sooner or later, the people have to rise up against it and they vanquish it. And that's what happens. Fortunately, we don't have that in football or basketball or baseball. We just have games. We just have games. All right, let's see here. This story about Maha, the health uh, effort by RFK Jr. I think for the first time in my lifetime, which has been considerable, I was born in the way back in the middle of the last century. Uh, I have heard this privately. I've heard it at conferences. I've heard it at symposiums, but I've never really heard it on a national forum before. And I'm so excited to hear Brooke Rollins. Brooke Rollins is the agriculture secretary in this country. Yes, she's withholding SNAP funds, for the states that won't cooperate with cleaning up their rolls of dead people and illegals receiving SNAP benefits. But um, she was about to make her announcement on December 10th, and it was related to this subject that I have heard a lot about in these symposiums and different meetings around the country, and that's what we call a regenerative culture, specifically a regenerative agriculture. I made good friends when I was building the biodiesel plant up in Washington State with a lot of farmers, a lot of wheat farmers specifically, because the wheat co-ops were very powerful politically and very rich, billion-dollar organizations. And they were interested in planting canola as a rotation crop because it greatly strengthens the soil for wheat growing. If you grow every fourth or fifth year, you grow canola, it helps the subsequent wheat crops and helps rebuild the soil because they had this idea that's been preached to them for 50 years, but they've never actually been able to do it. And that is this regenerative agriculture. Quit planting wheat on wheat on wheat on wheat on wheat or corn on corn on corn on corn because it strips the soil of all the nutrients that that crop needs. And you might say, well, yeah, but we're corn farmers. I got all these corn bins. I'm supplying, the ethanol business. I'm not interested in growing any other crop. But you have to rotate your crops or you kill the soil, right? So this regenerative agriculture is now finally a national discussion in the Department of Agriculture. And there are social media links, YouTubes and others going out there to encourage farmers. And these wheat farmers that I met would often introduce themselves to me as recovering wheat farmers because they were interested not only in not plowing the ground, we call it no-till wheat farming, but also in planting the canola as a rotation crop. So anyway, this live stream on YouTube was about to begin. And there was a sense of anticipation in the air. I was excited about it because it really means that, the millions and millions and millions of acres of U.S. land will be alive again. And when the video came on, Secretary Rollins stood alongside Robert F. Kennedy, the health secretary. And what stood out immediately was not the funding amount necessarily, but because they always talk money and sometimes it's there and sometimes it's not. And the next administration comes in and guts the whole thing and writes themselves a big pay raise. But it was the language talking about soil health, talking about human health, talking about nutrient density, talking about the microbiome. When have you ever heard a cabinet member talk about the microbiome? Like never, right? And of course, microbiology. Now, the living systems beneath our feet and within our bodies were initially being discussed as part of one connected reality. And I don't know how you feel about that, but this language really matters. I wrote the birth trilogy on an assumption, and the assumption was that Earth, planet Earth itself, was a living thing. It was a living, breathing entity. And when I explain this to people, regardless of if they're farmers or movie makers, everybody agrees with this. Yeah, I kind of always thought that. But when you extend that and you say that, and by the way, this entity, Earth, has a symbiotic relationship with humans that live on the Earth. And when humans are good, kind to the Earth and clean to the Earth and good and kind to one another, Earth has a positive reaction and wants to release its bounty to humans, and humans prosper. And when mankind is wicked and they treat the earth poorly, they pollute it, they burn it, they strip it, they don't treat it well, Earth has an allergic reaction. It has an earthquake or a volcano or a tsunami. It has a winter storm to beat all winter storms or a drought or whatever, and spanks mankind back down to a few tribes to start over again. And we have plenty of events like that in history, universal flood notwithstanding, where the earth has done just that. So on paper, this regenerative agriculture sounds very impressive to me. Just because it's a national conversation. In reality, when it's spread across acreage that is already regenerative, it comes out to be roughly $16 an acre. That's what it costs to make this happen. And farmers, they're doing the math. They're getting it, especially ones that have already recovered from the old mentality of just plant and plant and plant and plant until it's gone. And many compared it to the $12 billion recently allocated to the soybean farmers to ease the losses from China, who's no longer buying at the previous levels. And, that imbalance is familiar to farmers. They're used to that roller coaster ride. But the truth is that this language is a little bit different because it isn't the government that's going to save us, okay? It never was the government that was going to save us. The government could destroy us, but it's not going to save us. What matters is what was said on stage, that the magic of bounty and this symbiotic relationship with the earth itself as a living thing was at the highest levels of agricultural leadership. It wasn't just the birth trilogy. It wasn't just dumb old engineer Brooks Agnew talking about it. These are the leaders of the country. Maybe they read the birth trilogy. I don't know. But years and years of pushing and educating and farming and speaking have forced the mainstream to acknowledge that regenerative agriculture exists and that what many of us may have been saying for years, we are not the fringe anymore. We are the mainstream. We're not experimental, okay? This is not untested. It works. It is rooted in a biological reality. Not long ago, when regenerative agriculture was barely even a term, a simple Google search would return almost nothing. I mean, you're going to find the Ryland Englehart's small website and the work of Alan Savory. And if you watch the film, The Biggest Little Farm, you ever seen that? The Biggest Little Farm? Oh, you can find it. You can find it. It's out there on YouTube. Go watch it. You want to watch a really cool movie on regenerative agriculture, watch The Biggest Little Farm. It's incredible. It's a documentarian who buys a farm and has this idea to hire this guy to help him build a sustainable farm, to have the right trees and the right pets and the right animals, that everything sustains everything else, owls and ducks and fruit trees. And watch it, okay? The Biggest Little Farm. It is finally getting out there. And that was essentially it. It finally took. And today, regenerative agriculture is discussed in policy rooms, in media, in public health conversations. And, that was no accident. That was focused. We did that. As someone who has spent years pounding the pavement on small stages, podcasts, gosh, how many articles have I written on this? More than, and a book, a best-selling book, a number one best-selling book. Hearing words that could have come straight from the birth trilogy or from the mouths of so many friends, spoken by the Secretary of Agriculture, was a real turning point for me. I was greatly encouraged, but I am totally out of time. We'll see you on Wednesday night right here on America Free Radio.
Thank you for listening to Revolution Radio.